On Wednesday, Harry rang me while I was at the office. "Tanya, I can't make it to dinner tonight," he said. "My parents arrived from Portugal this morning, and they need to discuss something urgent with me privately." This struck me as odd. In the 8 months we'd been together, he'd barely mentioned his parents. Only twice, in passing. He never said they lived in Portugal, never spoke of visiting them or them coming here. Whenever I brought up his family, he dodged the question. That night, I drove to his place. His Camaro was nowhere in sight. I'd been covering the insurance on that car for 3 months. I called him, no response. I texted, asking if everything was okay with his parents. 2 hours later, he replied that they were deep in conversation, and he'd call me the next day. Sleep eluded me that night. Something about the situation felt off. Harry had been acting strange lately, more withdrawn. He used to message me all day long, but over the past 2 weeks, his texts had grown brief and sporadic. The next morning, I opened Instagram. Harry had posted a picture from the previous night at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant downtown. The caption read, "Family dinner red heart." In the corner of the photo, I noticed a woman's hand, not his mother's. The nails were painted vibrant red, adorned with distinctive ring designs I recognized. I zoomed in. The hand belonged to someone younger, with delicate, costly-looking rings. Harry's mom would be in her 50s. This was not her hand. I'd seen those rings before, but couldn't place where. That afternoon, I dug deeper into Harry's Instagram. I found older posts from before we started dating, featuring a blonde woman named Stella. Her profile was public, and as I scrolled through her recent posts, I spotted those same rings in several photos. Stella had relocated to Seattle 8 months ago for a job, right when Harry and I got together. Her latest post showed she returned to our city 3 weeks ago, coinciding with Harry's distant behavior. I realized the hand in Harry's restaurant photo belonged to Stella, his ex-girlfriend, whom he dismissed as unimportant when I asked about her months earlier. On Friday evening, I decided to visit Romano's myself. I needed to uncover the truth. I called Harry first, suggesting we dine there. He brushed it off, claiming it was too pricey, even though I always footed the bill for our meals. I arrived at Romano's at 7:30, the same time Harry had posted his photo the night before. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:15, Harry's Camaro rolled into the lot. He stepped out with an older couple and a blonde woman, Stella. I grabbed a hoodie from my back seat, pulled on a baseball cap I kept in my car, and went inside. I asked the hostess for a table, and she seated me one table away from Harry's group. I kept my head low, hood up, my face hidden from their view. Harry was holding Stella's hand across the table. The older woman, presumably his mother, Priscilla, beamed at Stella. His father, Leonard, raised his wine glass in what appeared to be a toast. "Mom, Dad, this is Stella, the love of my life. We're back together," Harry declared with pride. Priscilla clapped her hands with glee. "That's wonderful, dear. But what about that other girl you mentioned, Tanya?" Harry let out a loud laugh, and Leonard chuckled, sipping his wine. "That pathetic girl," Harry said. "She's just my personal bank account. I've been using her for months while I reconnected with Stella. She pays for everything." I slipped my phone under the table and started recording their conversation, capturing every word. My car, my clothes, even my phone bill. "She covers it all," Harry went on. "I'll cut her off next week once Stella's settled back in." Leonard nodded with approval. "Smart move, son. Why work when you've got a desperate girl footing the bill? That's thinking ahead." The four of them erupted in laughter. "I can't believe she bought it," Harry said. "You told me she was pretty, but I didn't expect her to be this naive." "Pretty desperate," he added. "She thinks I love her, keeps talking about moving in together, maybe even marriage. I just nod and smile while she keeps paying my bills." Priscilla leaned in, curious. "How much has she given you altogether, darling?" Harry paused, calculating. "Around $4,000, maybe more. She got me that watch last month, paid my car insurance for 3 months, bought those shoes Stella liked." I had indeed paid for everything he listed. The watch cost me $600. I'd worked extra shifts at the call center to cover his car insurance. I'd skipped meals and canceled plans with friends to afford the clothes and shoes he claimed he needed for job interviews. Stella pulled out her phone and started scrolling. I should thank her myself for taking such good care of my boyfriend. What's her Instagram handle? I want to see this walking ATM. Don't, Harry said, reaching over to lower her phone. I need her to keep paying until you're fully settled. Then I'll block her everywhere. Leonard raised his glass again. To my clever son, solving his money problems so easily. No need to work when you got a sugar mama. They clinked glasses, laughing, while I sat motionless at the next table. 8 months of my life, believing Harry loved me. 8 months of sacrificing my own financial stability for someone who saw me as nothing but a cash machine. I stopped the recording and quietly stood up. I left a $20 bill on the table for the water I'd ordered and walked calmly to the exit. Harry had no clue I knew the truth now. He didn't know I'd recorded every word of his betrayal. He was about to discover what happens when you try to exploit the wrong person. The response to my initial post has been absolutely overwhelming, with so many of you curious about what happened after I left that restaurant. Buckle up, because things took a wild turn from there. After storming out of Romano's, I sat in my car for about 5 minutes, gripping the steering wheel tightly. My hands trembled, not from sorrow, but from a burning fury. 8 months of my life poured into supporting him, working extra shifts to cover his car payments, all while he was secretly building a future with someone else. What stung the most, though, was how they all laughed, like I was the punchline to some cruel inside joke. Harry's dad lifted his glass, mocking me as a sugar mama, while his darling son boasted about exploiting me. Stella, scrolling through her phone, seemed eager to catch a glimpse of this so-called walking ATM. To them, I wasn't just naive, I was their evening's entertainment. I drove home in eerie silence. No radio, no calls of friends, just the sound of my own brewing rage, ready to erupt and consume Harry's sorry existence. When I stepped into my apartment, his belongings were everywhere, staring me in the face. His pricey gaming headphones, a birthday gift from me, sat smugly on my coffee table. His clothes hung in my closet, mingling with my work uniforms. His protein powders and vitamins hogged half my kitchen counter, and his sneaker collection was lined up by my door like he owned the space. That's when it hit me like a lightning bolt. This __ had been gradually moving his things into my place over months, all while telling his ex-girlfriend I was just a temporary cash machine. He'd been using my home as free storage, biding his time until he could reunite with Stella and start their real life. I snapped into action, grabbing his stuff. The headphones went straight into a trash bag, followed by his clothes yanked off hangers. His sneakers, toiletries, books, and that ridiculous cologne collection, all of it got tossed in. I moved like I was possessed, and honestly, it felt exhilarating. But stuffing his things into bags wasn't enough. This guy had humiliated me in front of his whole family, turning me into a running gag at their dinner table. So I hauled those bags outside to the sidewalk and started unloading everything. His jeans landed in a muddy puddle from last night's rain. His precious Jordans were flung across the pavement. I popped open his fancy cologne bottles and poured them all over his gaming gear. The stench was intense, but watching that cologne soak his $500 headphones was pure catharsis. I scattered his stuff across the sidewalk in the small front yard, some clothes draped over the fence, others tossed into haphazard piles. It looked like a hurricane had torn through a jerk's bedroom, and I couldn't have been prouder. Then I went back inside, slipped into cozy pajamas, scooped a massive bowl of ice cream, and settled in to binge Netflix. For the first time in ages, I felt utterly at peace. No stressing over Harry's bills, no budging for his next crisis, no listening to his endless complaints while I worked overtime to bankroll his life. Around 11:30, I heard his car screech to a stop outside, followed by the slam of his door and a bellowed, "What the hell?" so loud it set off a neighbor's dog. Peeking out my window, I watched him scramble to collect his belongings from the sidewalk, frantically stuffing wet clothes into bags, wiping cologne off his electronics, and gathering shoes scattered across the yard. He looked completely unhinged, like he couldn't fathom how his carefully crafted con had blown up in his face. 5 minutes later, he was pounding on my door, the kind of furious, aggressive banging that made my neighbor's lights flicker on. I cracked the door open, keeping the chain lock in place so it only budged a few inches. Harry's face was flushed crimson, his breath coming in gasps as if he just sprinted a mile. Through the window, I spotted Stella lounging in a Camaro, clearly there to watch whatever showdown he had in mind. "Tanya, what's wrong with you?" he demanded. "Why is all my stuff trashed outside? Are you losing it or something?" Peering at him through the narrow gap in the door, I felt an unshakable calm. "Oh, I just cleared out some junk from my place," I said, coolly. "Since you're moving in with your soulmate next week, I figured you wouldn't need it here anymore." His face went pale so fast, I thought he might collapse right there on my porch. He stumbled over his words, scrambling to figure out how I knew about Stella's return, their plans, everything. "I don't know what you're talking about, Tanya," he stammered. "You're acting unhinged. Let me in so we can sort this out like grown-ups." "Grown-ups?" I burst out laughing, nearly choking. Grown-ups don't treat people like personal cash machines while secretly building their real lives with someone else. That's when it hit him. I'd been at the restaurant. I could see his mind racing, trying to piece together when I could have been there, what I'd overheard. His mouth flapped open and shut like a stranded fish. "You were spying on me," he finally spat. "That's deranged, Tanya. You need serious help." Still chuckling, I shot back. "Harry, you faked loving me for 8 months while siphoning my money to fund your real relationship. But sure, I'm the one who needs help." His temper flared, and he shoved against the door, trying to force it open. "You can't just toss my stuff out like trash. Some of that gear was worth thousands." "Funny," I replied, "because I'm pretty sure my money paid for most of it. So really I just threw out my stuff." That pushed him over the edge. He started yelling through the door, hurling every vile insult imaginable, pathetic, desperate, ugly, stupid. It was like a replay of what I'd overheard him tell his family at dinner. "You know what, Tanya? Good riddance. I was going to ditch you anyway. You're worthless, and Stella and I have been laughing at how easy you were to play this whole time." I could hear Stella from the car, urging him to cool off, probably worried about the neighbors calling the cops. But Harry was unstoppable, shouting loud enough for the whole block to hear. "You think you're clever, but you're just a pathetic, lonely girl who paid thousands for a guy to fake affection. At least now I don't have to pretend touching you doesn't disgust me." His words only made me smile. He'd just confirmed every suspicion I had. And now, with neighbors as witnesses, his true colors were on full display. I shut the door and switched off the lights. Harry kept banging and shouting for another 10 minutes, until Stella finally persuaded him to leave. From my bedroom window, I watched them drive off, still bickering as they rounded the corner. The next morning, Christine from next door brought over coffee and told me she caught the whole scene on her security camera. She started recording when the yelling began, just in case the police needed to get involved. So now I have video proof of Harry's meltdown on my doorstep, while his new girlfriend sat in their getaway car. Honestly, I thought that was the end of it. I figured Harry would vanish into his new life with Stella, and I'd never see them again. I couldn't have been more wrong about what was coming next. Second update. Okay, I thought Harry's doorstep tantrum was the final chapter of this disaster, but apparently this manipulative jerk wasn't done with me yet. Your comments on my last update have been incredible, and honestly, your support has been my lifeline through what happened next. The morning after his outburst, my phone was buzzing with calls from my mom. 6 calls before 9 a.m. on a Saturday, which meant someone had been feeding her lies. When I finally picked up, she was in full panic. "Tanya, Harry called us this morning, and he's really concerned about you. He says you had some kind of breakdown and destroyed thousands of dollars worth of his things for no reason. He thinks you need professional help before you hurt yourself or someone else." I was floored. This garbage human had the nerve to call my parents, painting me as the unhinged one after I caught him plot his future with another woman while spending my money. And why mother kept insisting that Harry had seemed genuinely worried, emphasizing that smashing someone's belongings wasn't how grown adults dealt with heartbreak. She urged me to visit on Sunday to talk about how I'd make amends to Harry and cover the cost of everything I'd broken. I cut the call short, which likely only reinforced Harry's claims about my erratic behavior. But on Sunday morning, I headed to Christine's place and got a copy of the security footage from that chaotic Friday night. We transferred to a DVD, and I brought it directly to my parents' house. Seeing Harry's outburst from a camera's perspective was even more satisfying than witnessing it in person. The audio captured everything, him labeling me as pitiful and worthless, confessing he planned to end things anyway, and boasting about how easy he played me. The video showed him hammering on my door like a madman while Stella sat in his car. My parents' faces drained of color when they heard Harry yell that being near me repulsed him. My dad instantly apologized for doubting me, and my mom was in tears over how convincing Harry had sounded during their phone call. Still, the triumph was fleeting, because Harry wasn't done meddling in my life. On Tuesday afternoon, he showed up at my apartment building again. This time, he wasn't pleading or emotional. He looked entirely different, self-assured, almost gloating, like he was reveling in some secret amusement. He wore new clothes I definitely hadn't bought, and his smug expression made me want to lash out. As I tried to brush past him to enter the building, Harry blocked my path with a fake, overly friendly grin. "Hey, Tanya, just swinging by to grab some stuff I left at your place. You know, important things I really need back." I stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Harry, I tossed all your stuff outside that night. There's nothing of yours left in my apartment." But he kept pressing, claiming I'd overlooked valuable items he couldn't replace, insisting he needed to come upstairs to check my closets and drawers. It was painfully obvious Harry was just looking for an excuse to barge into my space and stir up trouble. I firmly refused and tried to move past, but he grabbed my arm, holding tight. "Come on, Tanya. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm being perfectly fair. Just ask if my own things back, unless you're keeping them as some creepy memento of us." He spoke loudly, ensuring everyone in the lobby could hear. A few neighbors glanced over, and Harry was clearly thriving on the spectacle, aiming to humiliate me publicly. I yanked my arm free and warned him to leave, or I'd call the cops. He just chuckled like I'd told a great joke. "Go right ahead. I'm sure they'd love to hear about how you trashed thousands of dollars worth of my stuff in a crazed fit. I've got photos, Tanya, proof of all the damage you did." That's when it hit me. Harry wasn't there to retrieve anything. He was there to bully me, flaunting how invincible he felt now that he was back with Stella. He wanted to prove I couldn't touch him, and that he could still manipulate me whenever he pleased. Over the next few days, Harry started appearing everywhere I went. Not in a desperate, obsessive way, but as if he was deliberately flaunting his contentment. At my usual coffee shop, I'd spot him and Stella at a corner table, laughing loudly like they were living their best lives. On Thursday evening at the grocery store, they were right ahead of me in the checkout line. Harry made a point of speaking loudly, telling Stella how much he adored her and how incredible their future together would be, sneaking glances to ensure I heard every word. On Friday afternoon, he showed up at my workplace again, but instead of coming inside, he parked his Camaro right out front for everyone to see. He and Stella lingered in the car for over an hour, clearly waiting for me to leave so they could stage some dramatic display. When my shift ended and I stepped into the parking lot, Harry rolled down his window and called out, "Hey, Tanya, just wanted to thank you for showing me what I was missing. Being with St.